So now that we have a pretty decent idea of why trends work, why we see that buying and selling pressure, we've got a good idea of the supply demand, we've got an understanding of that psychology, let's understand the various types of trends. As we think about the types of trends, let's start with defining what a trend is. And the definition I'm going to take comes from one of the kind of quintessential textbooks in the world of technical analysis called Technical Analysis. Special name, right? But here's the definition. The definition is a trend defines a direction in price. When we refer to a trend, we describe a directional trend, one of rising or falling prices. That is your general trend that we talk about, a directional trend. So we're either going higher or a directional trend of a stock that's going lower. That's what we mean when we talk about a trend. Now, again, there's a couple different types. We've got bullish trends, we've got bearish trends, and then kind of the one that we slide in there is the sideways trend. That's the trend that is trading sideways, not really going anywhere, but there is a trend, and it's what we call a neutral or a trading range trend. So how do we identify these trends? Well, that's a great question. And it's really going to come down to a terminology that we call peak and trough or peak and valley. But the idea is that we've got a price peak and we've got a price bottom, and we call that a valley or a trough. So we identify trends based on the peak and trough analysis. A peak is the price point where a stock peaks in price, and the trough is the price point where a stock bottoms in price. That is your peak and your trough concept here. We can also call these swing points. That's a common terminology that we use. But what you need to understand is that all peak and trough, whatever they are, whether you call it a peak, a valley, whether you call it a swing point, whatever it is, every peak and every trough or every valley, every swing point low, these are all going to turn into support and resistance moving forward. In an uptrend, the trend of a stock is continuing a higher advance. And the way we're going to identify this is by a series of higher peaks and higher troughs. In other words, we're just taking off and we're going higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. Those are peaks and those are troughs. And anytime we can identify a series of higher highs and higher lows, we've got some sort of an uptrend that is starting to take place. Take a look over here at CSX and notice I'm just going to draw through here, and notice the orange line. We've got a sequence of higher highs. Each of these highs are higher than the previous, and we got a sequence of higher lows. Each of these lows are higher than the previous. This is by definition an uptrend. An uptrend is a sequence of higher highs and higher lows. If we take a look at a downtrend, what you're going to find is a downtrend is simply the trend of a stock's continued decline lower, and it's going to be identified by a series of lower peaks and lower troughs. So again, we've got our swing high, and then we've got our swing low. We've got a lower high and a lower low, simply lower peaks and lower troughs. If we were to put this on a chart, take a look at First Solar here, and you can just simply draw your little circles around this and identify these are lower highs. Consequently, this is a downtrend, and you've got lower lows that are making up the bottoms. Now, sometimes there's some counter moves in here, but for the most part, you've got a predominant sequence of lower highs and lower lows. Now, let's talk about the sideways trend. The sideways trend is when you've got your peaks and your valleys that are matching. This is also called a trading range. And the idea here is that the trend of the stock is continuing to move up and down while failing to register consistent highs or lower peaks or troughs. In other words, it's stuck. It isn't going anywhere. Or maybe it's going somewhere very, very slowly. We call that a sideways trend. Now, in the sideways move, the peaks and the troughs, or the peaks and the valleys, they're roughly going to be in the same range as the previous peaks and valleys. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Notice this little move over here on Sears on the right side. You notice we do have some higher moves, but we kind of stop. Then we sell off. We have a lower move. We rally. The higher move is, well, kind of right where the last higher move was. And the next lower move is kind of right where the last lower move was. This is a stock that's stuck. It's going sideways. It's in a trading range, and it's a sideways trend, and a sideways trend can actually continue for a while as well. It's just not a nice directional trend, unfortunately.